I think the proper word for PGA DFS this week would be weird. Wonky, wild, maybe we'll go with one of those. One of the W's will describe this week's Butterfield Bermuda Championship because it is a strange field. There are like 97-mile-per-hour winds on Bermuda, so it's going to be a weird one. We're going to break things down, let you know which of these strange golfers we are targeting for this week, let you know the impact of the wind, and much more to get you set for some PGA DFS. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, Bermuda Championship coming up this week. We've had like 63 withdrawals. How you doing today?
Yeah, hard to keep up with all that's going on. I'm worried that I'm going to be talking up a golfer and he will have withdrawn, and I just missed it within the flood of Rob Bolton withdrawal tweets. I think he's up to like
15.
14, 15.
No, 15. Yeah.
That's nuts. Yeah, and I mean, it sort of makes sense. I think the travel restrictions, safety precautions are really strict for this week. Purse is really low. But hey, if you're listening to this pod, you're probably into this field regardless. We're doing this pod, so I mean, I'm into it. There are opportunities to, build some DFS lineups, make some bets. So yeah, it's not the most traditional field, but hey, we got something to get going on Thursday for us.
Yeah, and we talk about this with the NFL. Like, a bad slate is still a money-making slate. I think for DFS, it's actually better because if you do the research and dig into the non-traditional names in the field, you can actually like have a leg up. So although it's a weird field, it's kind of a fun field.
Yeah, so the 125 of the 128, because I think there are basically three big names here. If you count Christian Bezuidenhout as a big name, which
I got the McNulty gif going on.
Yeah,
a little iffy. But Matt Fitzpatrick's a big name. That's good. We'll take that. Patrick Reed is here. Is it full Patrick Reed? We don't really know, I guess. But we got some people out here. It should be kind of fun. We're gonna break things down here in just 1 second to get you set and let you know who these dudes are and why you should or should not use them in PGA DFS. But first, a quick reminder that the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed is firing on all cylinders right now because NBA and NHL are back. So, of course, Tom Vecchio has you covered with both of those each weekday with the Daily ISO and the Daily Deke. We have our NFL podcast, Week 7 recap already posted, breaking down the big takeaways from injuries, rule changes, the Chiefs weirdness, and all that. That is up as well. Our Week 8 preview will go up on Thursday and also record live on the FanDuel YouTube page, NASCAR and UFC on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Let's dive in here to Port Royal Golf Course out in Bermuda. It is 828 yards. Very short. Par 71. This is the third time they have played this course. So we do have some data here. No shot link data, but there is like raw data here. There are 132 golfers. Actually, I think it's 130 now. So they've had a couple more withdrawals, and they exhausted all of the replacements, the alternates. So I think it's 130 now. Maybe it'll be no cut event by the time we get to Thursday. But either way, right now, the top 65 plus ties make it after the first two rounds. So right now, exactly half would make it. If the field size stays the same, and we'll see how that goes the rest of the next couple of days. Okay, so that's the layout here. Brandon, very short course. What are the stats that have stood out at the past in Port Royal GC?
Yeah, average green sizes, really short course, shortest on the usual PGA Tour rotation. It's about 500 yards shorter than your average par 71. Or about 94% as long, depending on your perspective. And I think the wind here is really going to drive a lot, but it's also been pretty windy. It seems like it might be windier than in years past.
Yeah.
Or as windy as whichever year it was that finished. I think last year it was 15 under was the winning score. The first year was 24 under. So can play easy, but also has that defense of heavy winds, which makes sense being located where it is. So yeah, in 2019 it was Brendan Todd who won it at 24 under. He beat Harry Higgs by 4 shots, and Higgs beat the field by 2 shots. So the 24 under probably a little bit misleading anyway. So we're looking at maybe like 15 under. I think is probably a fair number to get to across your 4 rounds to get the win. With Brian Gay getting to that 15 under mark last year, maybe even a little bit lower if the wins do project or hit the projections on the high end. And if you do some, I mean, I do a lot of research that I probably don't need to do, but I did the research, and there's an inverse relationship with driving distance and the importance of course distance and the importance of driving accuracy. So basically, the shorter the course, the more quote unquote important driving accuracy can be, which I think really probably just means the golfers who have driving accuracy can still contend on shorter courses for the most part. And I think that's what we get here. And we're going to talk about the wind a good bit, and we got to strategize around the wind. And I was kind of thinking about this. It makes sense for a key stat still to be driving accuracy, even though you and I don't really like driving accuracy as a stat, at least enough to make it a key stat, because it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what else happened with the drive. You could be bunting it down the fairway, which these guys aren't hitting at 200 just to hit fairways. I know that, but if you're good enough to be on the PGA Tour or in a PGA Tour field and you excel at hitting fairways, but you're not long, you're probably like your overall skill set is probably that of like a bit of a shot maker and someone who can control the ball and be a little bit more accurate. So I do think that driving accuracy deserves still to be one of the key stats you look at, but overall my key stats will be strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, driving accuracy, strokes gained putting on Bermuda, and then as always, just some birdie or better rate in there, even though I don't expect this one to get much past 15 under for the winning score.
Yeah, so I also have driving or fairways gained as one of my key stats. I typically don't get there because I'll go with good drives gained because, I want guys who can at least be okay in that regard. But I think for this week, it's kind of important because when you think about wind, that's going to make it even tougher to hit fairways. I feel like, I don't know if that could be fully anecdotal, but like it's not going to make it easier to hit fairways. I can guarantee you that. So I think that to me, I am actually okay putting fairways gain in there. Whereas like it is a flawed stat for sure. It's kind of like scrambling. Like I know it's flawed and I'm not typically going to include it, but like I think in this specific situation, it does make a lot of sense, not just because of the wind, but also because of the way the course sets up. I also had birdies or better gain in there too, because I think that just in general, it's a good DFS stat to have. But usually we will do weather at the end, but I want to factor it in here because it's kind of a key discussion point for this week. So let's talk about weather now, and then we'll talk about the overall view of this event. It's going to be windy, very windy. There is a chance of rain Thursday. More importantly, wind speeds are projected at 30 miles per hour. They decrease to around 20 miles per hour throughout the day. So slowly, steadily going down. On Friday, wind speeds start off around 15 miles per hour. They will slowly decrease throughout the day, getting to around 10 miles per hour by the end of the day. So I think that if you're looking at like aggregate wind speed across all rounds, there would be a slight edge for golfers teeing off later on Thursday because they're getting closer to 20 than 30 on Thursday and dealing with like a 5 mile per hour gap on Friday. But I think with the winds being this high and with there being gusts and stuff like that, stacking waves is fully in play, like having a lineup where you skew heavily towards guys teeing off late Thursday, then having another lineup where you skew heavily towards guys teeing off early Thursday. I would kind of take swipes and hope you get guys who catch a break with the wind because those can happen for sure. As far as the weekend, 15 mile per hour wind Saturday, 20 on Sunday with a chance of rain. So it is kind of a key thing to note for this week that the wind is going to be very high. So, Brandon, what does it do for you from a DFS perspective? How are you altering things to account for the fact that we're going to see a lot of wind this weekend?
Yeah, I don't usually factor in weather to a heavy degree just because you can guess wrong, but especially in a field like this where there are no guarantees, there just aren't.
Mhm.
Matt Fitzpatrick is deservedly the betting favorite. He's the most likely winner according to my win simulation model, but he's like 7%. That's actually kind of high. It's not as high as 10 to 1, where he's listed on FanDuel Sportsbook, but you know with with this being an accuracy friendly course and a short course, that just puts a lot of these golfers in the mix. And I know it's going to sound weird to say some of these names you've never really heard of or never even seen before have a chance to finish, top 25. Like, it's very much in the cards this week because of how the course plays, because of the weak field. There are no guarantees, and with the wind injecting more variance into things. So honestly, I'm trying to let popularity dictate what I do at the very top, specifically with Matt Fitzpatrick compared to Christian Bezadenhout and Patrick Reed. But I really think it's a week where if you're playing multiple lineups, stack by tee times on Thursday and hope, like you said, catch the right wave.
And I think that will naturally lead to like lower exposure levels per golfer, which is probably good because I think just it's a higher variance event. We try to be as tight with our core as we can. I think for this week, though, it's okay to maybe tweak that a bit. If you're like, if you would typically go 60% Fitzpatrick, maybe tweak that to 45 or so. Like, don't go totally flat, but like maybe just lower your typical threshold a bit to account for the fact that things may be pretty high variance for this week. Talk about golfers who fit the course well and who have done well here in the past in just 1 second. But first, NHL fans, season is back going with games going on all week. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action by opting in to the NHL Parlay Insurance offer. All you got to do is place a four plus leg parlay on NHL games between now and November 2nd. If exactly one leg of your bet loses, get a refund and site credit. Max refund is $25 per day. Kick off the NHL season the right way by heading over to FanDuel Sportsbook and placing an NHL parlay. Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Connecticut, 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. In West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Or in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Let's dive into history at this event at Port Royal GC. Once again, they have been here twice in the past, in 2019 and 2020. You're going to start things off with Denny Mccarthy. Mccarthy is a guy we talk about at times in terms of, just being a short game reliant dude. But hey, short game may matter more this week with it not being as long of a course. So what do you see with McCarthy in the past at this course?
Yeah, McCarthy's probably just, I'm sure I don't know what his career earnings are, but I'm sure it's quite good. But he's probably like a victim of just not having being almost as good as like the best golfers in the world, but just not having quite the right skill set to play like peak golf on a lot of courses. If you put him in a course like this, I think he's very much in play, and we've seen that from him. He's finished 15th and 4th at Port Royal in his career. So one of the few guys with, first of all, 2 starts here, but also 2 good starts here. And according to Fantasy National, we don't have any we don't have any shot length data, so no strokes gained numbers from how guys finished well. But at least we do have fairways gained, greens and regulation gained at this course. And McCarthy, with his 2 strong finishes, he's ranked 13th among golfers who have data here in fairways gained, and 6th in greens and regulation gained. So probably means he was hitting fairways and hitting the irons well. And we know what the putting can be from him. He's one of the best putters that we have on the PGA Tour, specifically on Bermuda. So, I think at the salary of $10,100, Denny McCarthy is A borderline core play. I know we talked about leaving our exposure levels a little bit lower this week, but I think McCarthy might be locked in for a bobble hat slot against you. I'm pretty high on him. So what are you seeing with McCarthy?
Not quite that high, but I do think that there is a lot of value in having like one really good skill this week because McCarthy is an outlier in terms of his putting. And the advantage you get in that regard, where you're an outlier relative to a typical field, the advantage of being an outlier in a good sense in this field is even better. So I think that the overall thought process of getting to him is correct in that like he has a bankable skill that we know is going to be there against a regular field, but especially against this field. So I think that lines up well for McCarthy. He's probably going to make birdies on a course that's not as distance heavy. I just don't know if I'll necessarily get to him as like being a core play because there are guys in that same range I will like a little bit more. Like it's not a lot of guys, but I think that there are other options there I might like. So maybe we can cook up a bet here.
Yeah, who can you name there? Because that was a pretty mild range from what I saw.
I would do. I'll let you pick. Scott Stallings or Russell Knox?
To give to you against my McCarthy,
Yeah.
I will give you Knox.
Okay. So we have Russell Knox versus Denny McCarthy. Do you view them as being massively separated? Like, do you think that McCarthy is well above Knox?
Not really.
Okay.
I just like what I see from him. And, again, we don't usually dig into course history much, but I think that the fact that he's played here twice, finished well twice, and has like the right profile to finish well here again.
Yeah.
I might as well take a chance on him now because I probably won't play him the rest of the year.
True. Fair enough. Okay, so that's Denny McCarthy at 10-1. Knox is 9-8, and that is our first head-to-head of this podcast. I talked about with McCarthy having an outliers type skill that can benefit you more in this type of field. Ryan Armour has that as well. So I'll talk about Ryan Armour as well. What he has done at this course, accuracy matters a lot, and Armour has a lot of it. He's great proof of the value of accuracy here. He's finished 8th in each of the first 2 events at this course. He's gained an average of 1.2 fairways per round on the field, according to Fantasy National. He's only plus 0.5 on greens and regulation per round, which likely means he was probably gaining some on the greens. Bermuda is not his best surface. That part is tougher to bank on for sure. But it's not like he's been bad in terms of Bermuda putting. The issue for me with Armour is the form. Once you adjust for field strength, he's at negative 0.12 true strokes gained on approach per round, according to Data Golf. He has lost 1.2 strokes tee to green in both events since the start of the swing season. So swing season hasn't been great to him. Approach play has not been what it was previously. Armour used to be a really good approach player. Hasn't quite been that recently. He's $9,700. Is the course fit enough to get you on Armour at that number?
Yeah. The irons are not great. And again, if you use Data Golf's info, it adjusts for field strength, which is, I think, very, very, very important. But for me, you can bump up Armour anytime there's an accuracy-friendly course. The good finishes here. So it's almost the same sort of philosophy where it's the 2 really good finishes. And, Armour at this point, probably just a guy who plays courses that don't suit him quite as well as this one does. And so that's going to bring the data down. But there's kind of a difference where someone can just be in bad form and not really succeed on courses that fit them. And then there's these guys who are just probably constantly bogged down by playing courses that aren't quite meant for them, but they're still playing good golf. It's just hard for them because it's not their skill set. So for me, Armour is definitely in that conversation. And I had a feeling maybe you would say you liked him relative to McCarthy, and I would have denied that request for a bet because I like Armour enough.
Interesting. So you have Armour above McCarthy after considering salary?
No, I have it about equal.
Okay. Yeah, not enough to bet it. Okay, that makes sense. I think the Armour is someone I'll probably use in that range just because like that range is not like it's a little bit of a fall off from the upper 9,000s. It's kind of there, but I would say Armour is firmly in consideration despite the issues he's had with his approach play and despite the fact that he's not long. He's still 35th in birdies or better gained the past 50 rounds, which is a pretty good endorsement of what he does outside of that. So I think that he definitely works in that tier, and I'll get there. Despite, having some reservations around the form, I still think that he's worthwhile in this specific field for this week. Let's move now to your second golfer and the defending champ here. You talked about Armour having 2 finishes that are good. Brian Gay has 2 finishes that are better. What have you seen with him at Bermuda in the past?
Yeah, defending champ, finished 3rd in 2019, and unsurprisingly, nobody else has multiple top 5 finishes at Port Royal. Just again, hard to find 2 good results, let alone 2 great results, and so I mean, we got to talk Brian Gay at a salary of 8,800. Again, no shot link data, but we do have things like greens and regulation gained, and Brian Gay has gained an average. That was hard to say. Brian Gay has gained an average of 1.0 greens per regulation per round here, which is a top 10 rate according to Fantasy National. He's 4th in fairways gained. So again, something clearly worked for him at this course. Now, the recent form is awful. He has no top 40 finishes since February, and his irons are awful. But based on Fantasy National's 5 and 10 events leading in to his results here, he's been worse. He was worse before his win leading in. So again, I think we don't look at course history and say, you know what, this guy's in horrible form, but he's played well here. Let's go there. I think this is the most likely week of the year where I would do that.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not going to be able to get there myself because he's been so bad. But again, maybe he just is an amazing golfer who doesn't have PGA Tour level stuff at every PGA Tour course, but has it at this kind of course.
Yeah, that's tough. You're right. He was worse then. I was specifically worried about the approach play, but his approach play is just hideous going to that one too. Man, those are bad numbers.
Yeah.
I guess the one counterpoint would be that the thing that's kept, because the comparison there is his strokes gained total entering that event, and his strokes gained total recently has been better because of the short game, but he has such a good short game. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get there either. I think that what you're saying is correct, but I also agree that I'm not probably going to get there because there are other guys in that range I like, and I'd rather take swipes at them than banking on Gay having this magical resurgence once again in Bermuda. But I think what you're saying is correct. And looking at the form comparison, I don't know if I can get there with Gay. Specifically, the recent stuff really, really rough.
Yeah, it's really bad. And he's not even hyper accurate. I have him in 25th percentile over the past 50 rounds and fairways gained. So would I be surprised if he finishes top 10? No. Am I gonna play him? Probably not, because he's trending up toward the top of the field already in fansharesports.com's tags.
Oof.
For the week. He's tied for 6th. I mean, it's early, but you would expect, a value golfer coming off a win with 2 good finishes here amongst a field of a whole lot of unknowns.
Right.
Probably be 15, 20% maybe.
Sure. It's enough. We're all probably sit this one out. Let's talk about Russell Knox. We had talked about him before with the McCarthy bets. Let's go into him here. He finished 11th and 16th the past 2 trips here, but some of his peripheral numbers were good. I know, shocker, Russell Knox may have lost in strokes putting. Who could have predicted that? But let's talk about it. He gained an average of 1.9 fairways per round and 2.6 greens in regulation per round above the field. Both those rank second among golfers in those fields who are in this field for this week as well. And it makes sense because Knox ranks 10th in the field in fairways gained, 3rd in approach the past 50 rounds. The issue is that the short game stuff is not fluky. It's a thing. He ranks 88th in birdies or better gained the past 50 rounds, 108th in Bermuda putting. So Knox is an old school heat check kind of play where the ball striking is good, putting is bad. We used to feel great about that. Now we've come around and said, no. This is not great. But in this field, maybe being an outlier in terms of the ball striking is enough. What are your thoughts? What are your vibes on Russell Knox this week at 9-8?
So I know I took a bet against Knox with someone who has the inverse skill set with Denny McCarthy.
What if we combine them? Let's do that.
That's peak Tiger Woods, I think.
Let's do it. Russell McCarthy is peak Tiger Woods. You heard it here first.
But yeah, I feel like Russell McCarthy is a very different golfer than Denny Knox. But
Russell McCarthy is not a golfer. Russell McCarthy is an acoustic rock star. I know it's kind of contradictory as well, but like he does play like traditional stuff. Like he does like do like poppy type stuff, but like his background is an acoustic, and like he likes to do acoustic covers of his songs. That's Russell McCarthy.
And what's Denny Knox?
Denny Knox is actually a sprint car driver.
I can see that.
You know, local dirt tracks. He's known at the local dirt tracks. Yeah, Denny Knox
local hero.
They actually met once, Denny Knox and Russell McCarthy. Fun story. It was good.
Say Russell McCarthy's best song is actually based on the life of Denny.
Wow, I love it. I'm in.
All right,
sign me up for the movie.
So Knox, 94th percentile in fairways gained, good irons. We know. I mean, you laid it out here. There's a path to a really good finish. I have him kind of just. It's basically Reed, Fitz, Bezuidenhout, and then like everyone else has like 1 to 2% win probability. Knox is well within that. So he would be someone I would be willing to play. The reason I prefer McCarthy is just, I think it just feels like this is one of the spots where he can shine. So I just am drawn to Denny McCarthy.
Well, McCarthy's like, I don't know where his route to scoring has been more bankable than Knox's, because McCarthy ranks 44th in birdies or better gained the past 50 rounds, whereas Knox is 88th. So what McCarthy does works, and they both get a bump up due to the lack of distance at this course. So I think that's kind of a wash.
Yeah.
But I would say that McCarthy's route is probably more predictable than Knox's is, which may be stupid that I took the bet, but oh well. Either way, I think they both work this week.
I mean, Russell, we'll talk about line movement, but Knox is shortened a lot. So
yeah, I don't know if I could bet him, so that might be kind of weird, but it makes sense.
I think you could do worse.
Yeah, you could, for sure. Let's have a current form here and talk about some guys at the top of the field, because I think that the top of the field is pretty tough to figure out this week. We'll go through Matthew Fitzpatrick and other guys, or Matt Fitzpatrick and guys later on. But let's start off with two guys in the upper range, and Christian Bezuidenhout and Mito Pereira, two guys we talked about in the podcast, but like not as studs. So talking about Bezuidenhout first, and then we'll go through Pereira after that.
Oh, I was going to talk more about the top three, but we can.
Oh, do that. Yeah, no, do that.
I just think, would you agree there's a clear top three and then like a big teardrop?
I mean, it depends on Reed. Like, what's your read on where he's at like now, like physically?
Probably fine. I mean, he's played.
Okay. So
wasn't great, but
I think a big three works then, yeah.
So like I have Matt Fitzpatrick at 7% to win. Bezuidenhout at 5.6, Reed at 5, and then only Seamus Power at 3.2 is also above 3. So like for me, it's a pretty clear tier, and I think with the salaries being what they are, most people will view them as the top tier as well. But I think we should rank them and maybe talk about whether they are worth jamming in or not, because anytime we get a weak field and some better names, historically, these guys have not been quite worth it, but it feels a little bit different because Matt Fitzpatrick, Bezuidenhout, and Reed aren't just like Brendan Todd at the top of a field, and he feels way better. These guys, I think, are significantly better. My data has them significantly better. Over the past year, with field strength and recency adjustments, I have Fitzpatrick gaining an average of 1.1 strokes per round on what would be the world average golfer. Bezuidenhout at 0.97 and Reed at 0.95, and then nobody else is above a 0.55. So we're talking like almost a half stroke per round better than the rest of even the next best in the field. So I do think these three guys stand out. Reed did finish 68th at the CJ Cup after missing the cut at the Shriners. He's still coming back from being sick, but he's traveling to Bermuda. I've seen a post from him. He seems like excited to be there. You would kind of think he's good to go. And if he's at his, like, maybe not his peak, but like in Patrick Reed form, it's going to feel silly that we didn't just play Patrick Reed. Fitzpatrick won his last start on the European Tour. I think that will give him a lot of popularity, especially as the betting favorite and the highest salary golfer. And Bezuidenhout's somewhere in between. Again, Reed, the form not great. Fitz coming off of a win on the European Tour, which is probably about equal to like this field, honestly. And Bezuidenhout somewhere in between. 5th at the BMW PGA Championship on the European Tour. 3rd at the Corn Ferry Tour Championship. His true strokes gained average over the past 3 months, according to Data Golf, is the best in the field. So you could disagree with me that these are the top 3 with a pretty big jump over everyone else. If not, you can tell me that you think Mito Pereira is as good or better than some of these guys. So I would rank the top of the field: Fitz, Reed, Bezuidenhout. What do you think here?
So I'm going to talk about Mito, and then we can loop that in. It is still early, but Mito seems like he's going to be like a ball striking beast, which is kind of fun. He's got 34 rounds of PGA Tour data over on Fantasy National. In that range, he ranks 4th in approach and 25th in fairways gained. That means he should do well at this course. But the putting is terrible. He has lost in 5 of 8 measured rounds. He has gained more than 0.7 strokes just once. Because the ball striking is so good, though, Pereira still ranks 15th in birdies or better gained in this field. So I think that's kind of interesting for Mito. I think that if Patrick Reed were Patrick Reed, I would say that I'm going, Reed like 1B with Fitzpatrick 1A. I think based on what Reed has done the first 2 events back post sickness, I'm pretty concerned, and I'm kind of okay taking more of a wait and see approach. That could burn me because we want to buy in before the bounce back. But I feel like if you were neutral in those 2 events, I'd be more inclined to take a swipe. He's been actively terrible those first 2 events back. So to me, I go Fitzpatrick 1, Bezuidenhout 2, and then I actually go Mito Pereira number 3 over Patrick Reed. Am I stupid to not really want to be in on the Patrick Reed experience just yet?
I mean, it could easily, he could easily just be working his way back. But I do think that with so many unknowns, my simulations have him again at 5%. If he plays the golf he can play, it would be higher. But again, this is just for recency too. It weights recent rounds a lot more than rounds closer to a year ago. I couldn't really argue with you with Mito above anybody else in this top 3 because the early returns on his ball striking are good. He also ranked 8th in ball striking on the Corn Ferry Tour, which is not the best computed stat, but it's the best we got. It takes your total driving, which is your rank in distance and accuracy, and then the lower you are, the closer to the top you are, plus your greens and regulation gained, adds those together, and then it's the lowest of that. So it's better than nothing. And you're right that we should believe that Mito will be a good ball striker. I just don't know if the salary is low enough to avoid Patrick Reed.
Okay, fair enough. I think that makes sense. So I think the big deviation here is where if you Reed, we both agree Fitzpatrick and Bezuidenhout are above Mito, correct?
Yeah. Can I get you a Reed Mito bet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a bad format for Reed, if we're being fully honest here. Reed makes more sense from a betting perspective or a DFS perspective. A head-to-head bet's tough.
There are, it's early, but there are some. I feel like there's going to be some buzz where I think Reed is going to try to go nuts so he can make the Ryder Cup team when it comes back around. I'm going to keep about those things. Right? I'm going to keep a very close eye on Patrick Reed, and I'll probably bet him way more often than I should.
Okay, fair enough. So the Reed Redemption Tour begins this week, according to Brandon, whereas I'll take Mito and roll with him. Let's talk about some guys with, I guess actually one guy with a lower salary, Jason Dufner, and then I'll turn another stud. Dufner's 9,000. I think he's pretty interesting this week personally. What are you seeing in the data with him?
Recent finishes, not really all I look at, but it's sometimes just easy to say where guys finished. 42nd at the Fortinet Championship, 24th at the Wyndham, 28th at the 3M Open, 26th at the Barbasol, 18th at the John Deere Classic. Those are pretty similar fields to what we get here. This one's probably worse statistically. I'll have to look at that later, but Dufner is still 88th percentile in fairways gained over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. 83rd percentile in long-term adjusted strokes gained tee to green. Very weak putter overall, which is not what you want typically. But played here last year, finished 58th, but has at least played here. Sounds like you're in on Dufner at the salary. I think he's one of the better value options this week as well. So what are you seeing with Dufner?
It's everything you said. I mean, like the ball striking is still fine, and especially for this course where it's not distance heavy. He's had experience here, which is not like I don't need that, but it doesn't hurt, especially for a value guy. And like we're looking for dudes who have like the ability to perform in this field. Dufner's performed well enough against relatively similar fields, so like he's more of a known. So I'd say like for a cash game, Dufner is not a lock, but like very close to it. He'd be one of the first guys I would turn to in that range. So I think that Dufner grades out really well. I don't really have a lot of like concerns. The putting should be a concern, and it is like a thing that's in my mind, but it's not a big enough concern to push me off, kind of regardless of format right now.
Yeah, so like my stats only stuff has him in the 88th percentile for this field, which is pretty strong for the salary. He doesn't really separate from a win probability standpoint, but like nobody does.
Right.
So at the salary, with the promising finishes, within the field, I think that I'm totally fine with Dufner. Probably not one of my core plays, so you might be a little bit higher on him than I am. Not saying he's a core play for you, but I might not get.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's plenty here to go to Dufner.
Okay, Dufner's 9,000. Let's bump back up to the top range and talk about Chad Ramey. Ramey's 10-7. He's one of the guys coming up here from the Corn Ferry Tour, but the data down there is pretty interesting. As Brandon's mentioned, that the Corn Ferry Tour, I believe, a hair above the European Tour, correct?
It's generally about equal, but actually kind of a little bit better sometimes, yeah.
So this data does matter. Ramey finished the year ranked second on the Corn Ferry Tour in scoring average. He was between Will Zalatoris and Peter Uihlein, ahead of Mito Pereira there. Ramey was third in greens and regulation and fourth in driving accuracy. That should allow him to measure up well at this course where, like, we want some good ball striking there. Ramey ranks seventh in Data Golf's true strokes gained the past 6 months, and that does account for the level of competition. So I'm pretty tempted by Chad Ramey at 10-7. And I feel like, we're talking about the top three studs. They do have high salaries, but if you go with Ramey as your number two, that does offset it a bit. So what's your thoughts on Chad Ramey this week?
Like him a lot. He is probably my second place that I would like. If I'm looking process based, it would be Matt Fitzpatrick, because I think he's a cut above even the rest of that top tier that I have. And then Ramey, because of the salary being what it is. Ramey was 13th in ball striking on the Corn Ferry Tour last season. I have him 6th in my long-term adjusted strokes gain data. I think he's a great win bet. He will be in my head-to-head lineup against you, and he will be one of my favorite plays of the week.
Same. Across the board. Love to hear it, and he'll just be a cross-off for the bobble hat. So, it's fine. We might have a pretty similar lineup this week.
Despite, look, you're going to ask me for my concluding or final thoughts, and I'm going to say probably stack tee times based on wind and get different, but still for a head-to-head, I'm going to try to play the best process plays, and that's going to include Ramey. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'd agree with that as well. So let's move now to the bookmaker odds for this event for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. Matt Fitzpatrick has mentioned the favorite over at FanDuel Sportsbook. He's 10-1. Christian Bezuidenhout is in a tier of his own at 14-1, followed by Patrick Reed at 18-1. Mito Pereira is 20-1. Seamus Powers 22-1. Then there's another fall off down to 27. That's where you find Danny Willett and Hayden Buckley. Adam Hadwin and Chad Ramey are both 31-1, followed by Guido Migliozzi and Matthias Schwab Rounding the top group here at 33-1. So you've talked about the win odds being flat. That is reflected in the sportsbook data here outside of Fitzpatrick. What does that do for you in terms of your optimal roster construction for this week?
That makes me want to prioritize Fitz and probably Reed, but also Ramey, because the win equity from the upper 9,000 range is not drastically different than the low 9,000 range, or for some guys even the upper 8,000 range. I think there are some value golfers in play. So usually weaker fields imply less of the salary cap going into the optimal lineup, which kind of then implies that the higher salary golfers may not be worth it. The highest salary golfers in these weaker fields typically don't perform as well as they do in tougher fields, but that's just because the best golfers in the tough fields are the superstars. But I do think that, we've had fields where, and I think Todd last year in this specific field when we were talking was like, he's like the guy. The top three, I think, or top four, even top five, if you include Ramey, a bit better than that right now. So I'm still going to build around multiple studs. And I think Ramey is going to be a key part of that. And I'll just take some value and be light on the 9,000 range, like the upper nines and low tens.
So when you don't go Ramey, are you going to get in two of the top? Like, are you going to go Bezadenhout and Fitzpatrick at all, or is that too top heavy for you?
No, I'm saying I'm probably going to go Fitz, Reed, Ramey, and see what that leads me with.
Fair enough. Yeah, I will probably not be that top heavy just because Reed is a little bit tougher. But
would you do
like Bezadenhout instead of Reed? No.
Would you do Fitz, Mito, and Ramey?
Mito's 11-6, right?
Yeah. So virtually the same thing, but someone you prefer more.
Think because I think there's a bit of a drop off after 87 or so. That makes it tougher for me to feel great about more of a top heavy lineup. So I feel like that's going to push me towards going with Ramey as my number 2 as opposed to my number 3.
So Fitz, Reed, and Ramey leaves me with 85-33 for my final 3 golfers. I think that's very doable. The question is just, I'm talking a big game for Patrick Reed, mostly from an upside standpoint. I took a head-to-head bet against you. Will I put him into our head-to-head? Maybe. If not, I would strongly just consider Bezadenhout there. And then kind of have around 85-86 for my final 3. There are some golfers in the upper 7s I'd be fine with. So this might honestly be my default lineup, starting point.
So you're more top heavy than me. I think that I could see situations where I go like a Vaughn Taylor, who's $7,900, and then go more top heavy. But I think that would be more the exception than the norm for me. So you're saying that's your default is the 3 with Ramey being your 3rd, correct?
Yeah, and Vaughn, long time heat check.
Oh yeah. Baby.
Non-distance
course.
All I'll say is this: you plug in Vaughn along with that, you have 8,900 left for your final 2. That's pretty appealing to me because the upper 8s not a whole lot different than the low 9s, and the low 9s not a whole lot of different than the upper 9s for me. So
you're going to be a little bit more aggressive than me this week, which is the opposite of usual. Makes me uncomfortable. We'll see how that goes. But I get your thought process. Maybe there's not a big fall off, but I feel like, to me, there are fewer guys I'm comfortable with down there, I guess.
Yeah, comfort is not what I'm going for. I'm not
going to get comfort anywhere. I guess that was the wrong word to use.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the sort of max win equity.
Sure.
And the only win equity that's win equity over similar guys at similar salaries. The only place that comes from is the top 3.
Okay, that makes sense. Which golfers' odds have shifted since things opened up yesterday?
It's been kind of a mess with all the withdrawals, but Chad Ramey, our guy that we've been fans of for 40 years
Decades.
now.
He's 29, so we've been fans of him.
He just moved again?
What's he now?
I had him at 31. I copied and pasted. Yeah, he's 31.
No,
right
sorry,
now.
he's 29 years old. I meant we've been fans for 29 years. Sorry, no.
It was close enough to be believed, like, because I just pulled this like before the show. He was 33 on Monday. He is now 31 as of Tuesday morning. Russell Knox, your boy, 50 to 37. David Lipsky, 50 to 41. Hank Lebiota, our guy, 65 to 50. Bo Hostler, 80 to 60. Aaron Ray, 65 to 60. The Mr. Iron Cover himself, but good reason for it. So, but I respect it. Kramer Hickok, 80 to 65. Same for Honorbon Lahiri. Lee Hodges, Kurt Kitayama, Grayson Sigg, all from 100 to 80. Adam Svensson, 120 to 80.
What was that?
Adam Svensson, 120 to 80. And Von Taylor, 150 to 100.
Lebiota moving, is that like a correction from an opening number that was longer than it should have been, do you think? Because that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, probably. Also, people probably read my win simulation stuff and just set it down.
Look at Brandon moving markets on Hank Lebiota. What a thought leader in the space.
I mean, I think missed 4 straight cuts is what it is, but
I think it's 4 of the past 5.
4 of the past, either way.
I was looking at this earlier because he's a player pick for me.
But it's not been ideal.
No.
But hey, the data
all in.
The data is good.
Trust the process. Trust the process. In Hank, we trust. Which lower salary golfers, speaking of Hank, have odds that stand out to you?
Yeah, just because we have that, like, it's just a weird field. I'll name some guys above 9,000. Lebiota's 50 to 1 now, 94.
No, he's not. He's 41 now. Sorry, I just looked. He moved again. He's down to 41. We've missed the Lebiota train. I was going to make him a win pick, but I can't now.
Well, I recommended him at 65.
Moving markets. Look at you getting that closing line value. Which other guys outside of Hank have lower?
I couldn't find his name. I was making sure. So
withdraw.
Yeah, I was like, Lucas Ebert, Nick Hardy, Peter Uline, 55 to 1. Aaron Ray, Bo Hostler, 60 to 1. Jason Dufner, Honorbon Lahiri, 65. Harry Hall, 65. Nick Taylor, Austin Eckroat, Brandon Hagee, 70 to 1. So not a whole lot of guys who are like low 8s or upper 7s standing out. But again, these are decent win odds if you just trust the sportsbook odds, which, like, spoiler alert, if you run simulations and stuff, it's generally pretty tight with sportsbook odds anyway. So it's definitely good starting place. But all these names in the low 9s and upper 8s, like, it just makes it hard for me to want to sacrifice access to the studs, the few studs we do have, just to play the guys at like 97 who are basically as likely to win as these guys.
Yeah, that's fair. And like, maximizing win equity is good process in general. So I think that thought process does make sense. I just, I don't know. It's tough for me to get there for sure. Let's move now to our player picks here for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, starting off with the high range. Brandon, who you got here for this week based on the salaries over FanDuel.com?
So we're cool now if we talk about the same golfers, but that was going to happen for our first 3 again. And that happened last week, I think, or the week before. That was a bit much. So
who cares? It's a bad field too. Like, I don't care. We can overlap. Who cares?
Okay. Then I was going to talk about Patrick Reed, but I'll talk Matt Fitzpatrick instead.
You'll talk about the good Patrick.
Matt Fitzpatrick Reed.
Yes, there you go.
You know, he's going to be popular, almost assuredly the most popular golfer in the field, but has the best case, I think, of anyone to be a core play. Best long-term golfer in my database after adjustments for recency and field strength. He's accurate with the driver, one of the best Bermuda putters we have on the PGA Tour, most likely winner. He's going to be in my head-to-head lineup with you. I'm going to be overweight on him.
So Fitzpatrick is an accurate birdie maker who feasts on Bermuda. Like, I don't want to overthink that. I feel like that's just like exactly what we're looking for here. The approach hasn't been great recently, but he's had some pop weeks there, and I think that it's encouraging that he's still done well despite the approach being middling, because we know longer term he's not bad there, especially relative to this field. So he could spring back with the approach play. Everything else is good regardless. So I think that Fitzpatrick for me is like the number one guy by a significant margin. He will be in my head to head against you as well. So we're down to a 4v4. We've already said Fitzpatrick and Ramey will both be in there. So we're at least a 4v4, at best a 4v4.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a 3v3 too, because we're both going to play Hank Biota.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough. So, who else do you have down here?
I
So
I would go with Chad Ramey, but I will pivot here.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Denny Mccarthy. I like what I see from him at this course. Top 15s both years. S tier. He gets an S tier ranking as a Bermuda putter. Absolutely 97th percentile there. Not the most accurate driver, but like his ball striking relative to this field is about average, which is fine. The irons are a little bit weaker, but like the off the tee, the distance, the accuracy, about average, and then you're getting access to basically just the one of, if not the best, short game options in the field. So I feel good with McCarthy. He is very much in consideration for our head-to-head, and he would be if I didn't want to start with the three guys at the top. Like I can't get there. I can't get back up there.
Right.
So he's probably going to be someone I got to miss out on, but he's in the consideration.
Okay, so let's talk here about Ramey. We talked about the Corn Ferry Tour stats earlier on, and those are good, and that doesn't matter. But in a limited sample, he's been good on the PGA Tour as well. The approach play has carried over from the Corn Ferry Tour. He missed the cut of the Fortinet, but he gained 2.6 in approach across 2 rounds there. That's very good. Gained 2.2 at the Sanderson Farms across 4 rounds there. Gained 4 at the Shriners. The other aspects of his game haven't always been there in those events, but he did gain 2.8 off the tee at the Shriners. And as mentioned before, he was accurate on the Corn Ferry Tour as well. He's 10-7. It gives me a bit more balance after Fitzpatrick at the top. So I will take that and be okay with this. It's me, Chad Ramey is definitely a guy I'd like to get to and be overweight on for this week. I think he just makes a lot of sense. Anything you want to add on Ramey before we move on to the mid-range?
Just, we've seen the ball striking carry over. He's gained in all 3 of his PGA Tour starts.
Perfect. What do you have in the mid-range?
I have, well, we're both going to talk Hank.
Mm-hmm.
I will then start with Alex Smalley.
Okay.
I think he's a strong value at 9,200. Again, kind of skipping mostly over the upper 9s for me this week. 47th at the Shriners, 31st at the Sanderson Farms after a missed cut at the Fortinet. This is after 2 top 15 finishes on the Corn Ferry Tour to end August and start September. Ultimately is 12th in Data Golf's true strokes gain metric over the past 6 months. I think that he's not really going to get a whole lot of buzz, especially with Biota right there.
Yeah, I think that he's not too bad. Definitely looked into him at least to see if I want to get there. And like, I think in that range after Biota. So I might need 2 guys there. I think they'd be a consideration. Other guy I have in the mid-range is Scott Stallings. Irons have been a bit wonky recently, but the longer-term data says that he's good there. So if he snaps back this week, could pay off at $9,900. Stallings has lost an approach in 5 of the past 6 events, which ain't great. The one exception was his Fortinet, gained 2.3 there, finished 6th, missed the cut in 4 of the previous 5. Despite those issues, he still ranks 20th in approach the past 50 rounds. He's also 12th in birdies or better gained. Stallings' putting has been on the rise of late. He's still had bad events, which is kind of, what you expect, but he's gained at least 2 strokes putting in 6 of the past 14 events. So he's $9,900. I can live with that. I would say I'd probably put him below McCarthy and Knox. We talked to them before. Actually, I offered him as a head-to-head bet versus McCarthy. So I should probably go Knox, Stallings, McCarthy as my rankings. We'll go with that. Sure.
Yeah, I like him. I think that's who you offered me, Stallings or Knox. That's why I took Knox, just I was a little bit higher on Stallings.
Okay, fair enough.
So I like him, but I can't anticipate being in this range too much.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's talk about Hank. What puts you on Hank?
Everything. I think he'd be like second tier in this field, if not for all the missed cuts recently. The data in those missed cuts has been pretty good. 33rd in Data Golf's true strokes gain tee to green over the past 20 rounds. 6th overall. He's been putting really well, but the long-term ball striking, like tee to green's fine as well. So I think it's just a low salary here and good finishes at this course.
Yeah, for me, it's the same thing. The accuracy is not really there, but like he can put it on the fairways when he needs to. 15th in good drives gained, which means should do well this week. He's a beast everywhere else. So seems like there's a lot of betting interest in Lebiota, and the salaries are set based on the opening odds, which means you're just getting good value. So I think that Lebiota, like you said, probably the first guy you put into a cash game lineup after Fitzpatrick, maybe. That's probably those two. You start there, go from there.
Yeah, the only hard part now is I want those top 3 plus Hank, so I'm a little bit strapped. But if that's the case, the second, like I think Fitz, Ramey, Hank is just a lock for a 3v3 again for each of us.
Correct. It is. Oh well, maybe we'll go 6v6 or 0v0, whatever you want to view it. We'll see. What do you have for the value plays this week?
Bo Hogue, 8,700. He's the best long-term golfer in my database among all golfers below 9,000. Some of the best ball striking in the field, not just among like relative to the value plays. So you like that. 97th percentile in greens to regulation gained over the past 50 rounds, and about a baseline putter on Bermuda greens.
I looked into Hogue as well, thought that he was interesting and considered him and would use him as well. So I'm aboard at that one. My first one is Jason Dufner. It is swing season, and we kind of want to use sexy names during swing season, and Dufner is not sexy, but he does what we need. He ranks 17th in fairways gained, 12th in approach, 26th in birdies or better gained. You mentioned the fields he's played in. They're not very good, obviously, but he grades out well even when you adjust for the field strength. So seems like a steady asset at 9,000, kind of hard to find. So I do like him quite a bit. Will be there for sure. I'm higher on him than you are, but I'm fine with that personally, based on the overall profile. Who else do you like here in the value range?
Chase Seifert was kind of trending up earlier in 2020 or 2021. I don't want to think about 2020 too much. But the reason that I'm backing on him is that the salary's low at 8,000. The fairways gain numbers are good, 92nd percentile, 86th percentile in birdie or better rate gained, 82nd percentile in long-term adjusted approach. So if he can just hit fairways, hit the irons well, and just tap some in, he's a plus putter on Bermuda, not substantially so, but it's like the right profile for Seifert to get back on track.
Yeah, I think that so he's $8,000. Seifert, a lot of green in the profile for sure. I think that makes sense. Would you use Von Taylor at 7.9? He's a name I threw up before. Would you use him or no?
Yeah, he's an other to consider for me and my helper on numberFire. Also,
I'm
Andrew Novak.
Seifert's above him, correct?
Seifert's a primary play here.
Okay.
But Seifert, Taylor, and Andrew Novak even. We have some options, which is why I'm willing to go hard at the top.
I think that makes sense. My second value play is Brian Steward. In general, he's pretty rough off the tee, but most of that is due to a lack of distance, which matters less this week. He actually leads the field in fairways gained the past 50 rounds, which again is a flawed stat, but he's 27th in approach. The irons are very good too. Steward ranks 42nd in Bermuda putting, which I will certainly take. He has missed 3 cuts in the swing season, but hasn't been like totally off. Like he's been around roughly the number in those 3 missed cuts. So I'm fine going back to him here at $8,700. I'm feeling pretty okay about that. One thing I'm like tinkering with here, because I've been, filling out a bobble hat lineup while we've been building, is am I willing to take a swipe at a Seifert, at a Taylor, someone like that in a cash game? For tournaments, fine, totally okay. But like for a cash game, that's a different discussion. And based on what I have right now, I think I'm actually leaning towards doing that just because I don't really want to bank on like 4 dudes in the low 9,000 range effectively. So I think that I'm not getting to you where I'm like using them to jam in Fitz, Ramey, Reed, whatever. But I think I'm using them in order to avoid having too much exposure to non-Hank Lebiota guys in the low 9,000 range. I think that's where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. I will I'm cool with it to have these guys in cash games because there's extra volatility for everyone this week based on the weather and the fact that you can't just be long off the tee and kind of build up an inherent like number of strokes gained against the field just because you're hitting it far. It's not really the type of course where you do that. Also, not many of these guys are like long hitters anyway, so going to be pretty close. Going to be some names that we think are probably a little bit safer who are on the cut line and just kind of get the wrong edge of it. So,
well, especially with like the wind being what it is, like there's going to be some like this is an example we've gone to a couple times, but like Justin Thomas at the Sony a couple years ago was like 7-1, big time favorite, but there were massive wins. He missed the cut. Like that stuff can happen. So backing up what you're saying, that can happen.
Yeah. So with that, I just find, and it might sound silly to be like, why am I targeting the studs? It's because they're the only 3 or 4 who I really feel like are separate from like, yeah, I have
the blob.
Yeah, it's not quite. It's like just a line. If you start from like 11,000, it goes down like steadily, but like I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between someone at 10.5 and 10.3 or 10.3.
The speed graph. Shoop.
I don't know, man. I'm out of my element here. I was trying to. Also, we're doing visuals, but
shoot, we're on YouTube. Who cares? Everyone's
That's
watching
true.
on YouTube. Yeah, no one's ever listened to the podcast. It's always on YouTube. They want to see our your Timberwolves hat. They want to see my whatever. It's the speed graph. Shoop. Yep, that's how it works. Anyway, that is all that we have here for today. Once again, check out Tee Times once they're posted. They were not out when I checked earlier on the podcast. Also, believe this event's going to lock earlier on Thursday than usual because it's in Bermuda, so it's pretty far east. So I would make sure you have your lineup set before you lay your head down for the night on Wednesday night to make sure you have that locked before lock on Thursday morning. And check Tee Times, account for the weather, account for waves and stuff like that before you finish things up. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, NBA, NHL, PGA, UFC, NASCAR, and the NFL thing as well, all in one place. Once you hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, whatever it may be, hit subscribe and leave a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
They might ask me if we're doing win picks.
Oh man,
I was trying to get.
I have like the rundown on the side thing here.
Yeah,
and, like I realized I was still on player picks. So I'm gonna take it down because I'm doing the intro, and then I forgot to do win picks.
Well, I thought I'd get like a second, but you just were going at it.
Yeah, man. Like I don't know.
So I mean, you did but you did all that. Now it's out of the way, and we just get to do win picks, and then I'll say my Twitter handle and we leave.
You're right. Okay, who you got?
I'm gonna go Patrick Reed at 18-1 still, and it was gonna be Hank at 65, but now 41 is a bit much. What's Smalley now?
I'm going Ramey, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna do Ramey too.
We can both do them. That's fine.
Yeah, I think Ramey's my top pick.
Okay.
But I think Smalley as well. Bo Hogue would also be in consideration. But I have win simulations up on numberFire.com that you can check out.
So you want Ramey and Reed as your official picks?
Yep.
I'm gonna go Ramey and
Mito?
How much do I want to regret this? Yeah, he's a consideration. Mito Pereira is a consideration for me. This is really great audio as I hem and haw. Ah, man. Let's go Mito. Ramey 20-1. At 20, yeah. Ramey's 31-1. Reed is 18-1. Mito 20-1 over FanDuel Sportsbook. We probably both would have gone Hank had he not shortened, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Would you have gone him at 50-1 or just 65?
I was considering him at 50.
Yeah.
I think that would still be in play. I'd have to check the value there, but
so if you see a hanging 50 on Lee Biota at a different book, you probably won't, if I had to guess. But like if you can, maybe take a swipe there. I think that makes sense.
I think FanDuel had it easily the the longest odds when he opened.
That's happened a couple times. So yeah, check it to see if it's there. But based on the current odds, can't quite get to Hank. That is all that we have. Brandon, what is your Twitter handle for the good people out there?
At Gadula13, GDULA13.
Thank you for reminding me of the win picks. I appreciate that, because imagine paying attention to the rundown that you made. Who could possibly do that? I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your lineups for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. Good luck with the win. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.